Good morning. Thank you for coming and tuning in to this webinar, Love After Baby. Um, and okay, we're ready to start. Love After Baby, Rebuilding Intimacy and Connection Through Couples Therapy. I am Dr. Irena, a licensed psychologist and a certified emotionally focused therapist and prospective supervisor. And I'm really glad you are. This is a very dear topic to my heart, so I'm glad to share this. And the plan for today is that I'll be talking about all the changes. Uh, I will be talking about how parenthood transforms the relationship and all the changes that the relationship goes through. Then the impact of parenthood too on both partners. And then, I want to spend some time talking about why this period feels so hard. It's tender and it's sweet and it's special, but it's also very hard. And how couples therapy, and especially emotionally focused couples therapy, can really help couples restore connection. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Um, First thing is that relationship satisfaction declines postpartum, and this is very consistent across studies. And what's interesting is that their studies actually show anywhere between 2, 3, even 4 years decline in couples satisfaction. And, Gottman found that 67% of couples, report significant decrease in satisfaction. So it's very up to 3 years. Another meta-analysis found, like moderate decline in the first year and then, more decline, not as much in the second year of, child's, after the baby is born. And what's really interesting is that this is consistent also for heterosexual couples and same-sex couples, that this relationship satisfaction declines. And, it's different from couples who don't have kids, who are not parents, they don't experience this very sudden decline. So for all the, parents here, professionals or not, if you're struggling, if you feel that, your relationship is different, you're feeling distant, I want you to know you're not a failure. It's common, and it means that you're human, uh, um, you know, and intimacy changes, that's probably one of the first things that the couples, experience, especially right after the baby. Sexual frequency decreases and desire diminishes, especially for women. And of course, emotional intimacy changes and become, and that declines as couples are so focused on parenting logistics. What does the baby need? And, I do want to mention that moms, either like right after having a baby, or maybe you can have like a baby and a toddler, an older child. What happens is that they're so, of course, there are hormonal shifts, but they feel like so touched out. They're constantly holding or being touched, or maybe like the older child needs now more attention, it's more needy. And that can also contribute to change in intimacy. They feel like, I need my body back. I need some privacy. Communication becomes different, and that shifts. And what happens is that it becomes more task focused, and it's less emotionally supportive. It's parents become so focused on like, what does the baby need, when is the next feeding, and of course, that takes priority. And then many couples start to feel like roommates, not like romantic partners. And unfortunately, the vision of labor is still very uneven. And what I'm specifically thinking of, that women still carry the majority of invisible labor. And what I'm thinking of is that labor of thinking, caring, when is the next pediatrician's appointment? Do we have enough diapers? Um, you know, uh, And also, if she is, on maternity leave or precious but completely insignificant, insufficient, 12 or 20 weeks, she may expect herself to take care of the baby and everything else in the household. Sometimes her partner will feel the same way. He would come home and say like, well, but the house is a mess. What did you do the whole day? And this perceived inequality leads to resentment and conflict. Um, and expectation mismatch of who does what is really one of the key predictors of dissatisfaction in the relationship. Emotional disconnection is very common, and I think that's part of identity shift, and we don't really pay enough attention to that. That becoming a mom and dad is really, especially for the first time, is such a big change. It takes time, and this new identity, and it really takes up to 2 years to fully kind of like wrap your mind around of like what it means to be a mom or a dad. These new identities actually eclipse your prior roles of lovers and friends. And while mom is can be so preoccupied, with the baby, and that's completely normal, that's expected. That can feel sidelined, unimportant, kind of like replaced by baby, which can be, lead to this, disconnection. And of course, there's less of affection and you know, and this can all create, more emotional distance. Um, Studies also show that conflict among couples increases, and very very often, small misunderstandings or what might be or appears to be a small misunderstanding can so easily escalate into big arguments. Something like, why do I have to tell you to, sterilize bottles because we need them, in 2 hours? Or why do I have to tell you to stop by and get diapers on the way home? Don't you know we need them? Why do I have to tell you? So when parents are really tired and exhausted, this misunderstanding can so easily escalate into something very, very big. Um, and then there's something that's not often talked about: postpartum anger, and especially for moms. And it stems from actually mismatch of expectation in terms of like how much help she's getting, or not getting. And of course, this high stress level that parents experience can really trigger a negative cycle of criticism, moms being critical and the other partner withdrawing. And I do have to say, even though if it's common, it's not. It happens. It is. These problems can linger for a long time unless they are addressed. So they should be actually taken seriously. So, what happens with both partners? What's the impact on both partners, well-being? As I've mentioned, talked about, mothers often feel both emotional and physical depletion, and when their partner is not emotionally or physically unavailable, that can lead to even more stress and sadness and depression and also anger. And we know, and this is the study show, that poor relationship quality, from fighting, distancing, feeling unsupported, is linked to, postpartum depression and anxiety in moms. And I do want to say dads. I mean, we don't talk about dads. 10% of dads actually experience postpartum depression too. They are affected too. So, I do want to start thinking that, this would be, when we think about mom's well-being and also dad's well-being, that one way of addressing postpartum depression and anxiety is actually, addressing their relationship. That emotional support from partners is actually a strong protective factor for both moms and dads and their well-being, and reduces postpartum depression and anxiety. And why I do want to talk about why these periods feel so hard. It's very tender, it's special, it's unique, and yet having a baby changes everything. It's a time of huge, physical change, of course, for mom, 9 months, and then you don't your body, if you're breastfeeding or not, it takes time for your body to get to like pre baby. Emotional change for both partners and identity change. As I said, um, becoming mom, becoming dad is such a big change that it takes a very long time to wrap your mind around it, what that means, and it takes time. Hormonal shifts, of course, sleep deprivation, and they're faced with constant demands, to take care of the newborn, which is very demanding, exhausting. And I do want to say, they have to deal with this like huge change, changes, at the time where they're sleep deprived, they're exhausted. So it really creates a perfect storm. And, I do really want to honor and, the fact that this is, for both partners, really the time of, high instability, new roles, new responsibilities, and losses. We talk about mom's loss of, her own, freedom, her own, like, body is different, but also for, the other non-birthing partner, often dad, he or she loses, his or her freedom, spontaneity, and loses the partner's availability. So, in the context of this really big change, I do want to say that this is the time that, emotional connection really matters, and it matters. And this is it's the best way to cope with this change. So, why emotional bond matters so much in the postpartum period, and I really want to start, shifting focus only on moms, and her having the baby on the relationship, because we all need attachment or bond. Even adults do, not only babies. And at our core, we all need to feel safe and seen and loved by our partner, especially at a time of big changes, such as, having a baby. So, secure emotional bond provides that sense of safety, and when life gets overwhelming, and I don't know if there's, this is probably one of the, most overwhelming, periods, stages of couples life, like having a baby. We all need to know, can I find you? Will I be there? Will you be there for me? When I feel overwhelmed or scared. And when partners don't feel that they can find each other, this question becomes really loud. And, if you can find your partner, and if he or she is not emotionally close, the question gets louder and angrier, and it can lead to, more anger and distancing from the other partner. Um, So, why emotional responsiveness matters this time? Because this is how couples stay close during hard times. This is how they stay connected. And it's not really big gestures, it's really small moments of pausing, noticing, your partner's emotions, kind of like noticing, speaking, tuning in, or kind of like being aware of what's going on with your partner in that moment. For example, when you walk into the house and you see your partner is, exhausted and frazzled, that you pause and look at her and say, honey, you look really tired. I know it's been a hard day. I know you've been, with the baby the whole day. And you're doing great. I know it's hard. And these small, these everyday, small actions can really make a big change. They shift everything. So emotional responsiveness is about being reachable to each other, being responsive, and being emotionally real. And that's what really builds emotional connection. And in this, during the time of transitioning to parenthood, to new baby or expanding your family, in the first, you have a new baby coming in, and, second, third, the stress is going to be really high. And the, you can fix it. You can change it. That's, normative stage. It's normative crisis. You can fix it, but what you can do to each other, you can show up emotional. You can really be emotionally present for each other. And, what does this mean again? It means noticing each other, um, and being able to, like, see and understand and get close to your partner's, emotions. For example, you see your partner coming home, from work, and he is really, unhappy, and you can see, I see this is also hard for you. You were up last night, you had a hard day at work. I know you're sleep deprived, and I get it. We'll figure this out together. We're gonna figure out sleep together. So it's not about solving problems, but it's about showing up for each other emotionally. And it's not about perfection. It's not about fixing, each other, but it's actually about, yeah, being emotionally responsive, and showing up emotionally for each other. So this is kind of like where we finally get to couples therapy and why couples therapy matters. And I am referring here to EFT, that stands for Emotionally Focused Couples Therapy, which is a research-based approach that strengthens emotional bond, um, in couples. And the EFT actually focuses really on helping partners understand and respond to each other's deeper emotional needs, And if you see here, I'm not focusing on mom. I really want the focus to be on partners, on the relationship, because both partners matter. And, EFT actually can help couples reconnect so they both feel seen and supported and loved in the hardest moments of actually having a child. And for postpartum couples, EFT can create space uh, for um, for them to say, "I'm overwhelmed. I need you. I'm scared. I feel alone," and they can really, speak in a way that brings them closer. And by restoring, emotional safety and emotional responsiveness, EFT actually can create uh, connection between connection in partners during really this, very hard, transition time. And, of course, by creating safety, and, it fosters emotional closeness, and that's going to lead to more physical and emotional intimacy. And what's really important is that partners start to see each other as allies, not as adversaries. They start to approach this, uh, you know, uh, the stress of having a baby as a team. And, it strengthens co-parenting, and I think, parents are much better. I mean, this is also what research, shows. They're much better parents. You can be much more responsive to your child, when you know that he or she, your partner has your back. And they can approach stress of, parenting, of, the chaos of, new baby, as a team. And what's really important is that they can, not that there won't be conflicts. Of course, there will be conflicts, but they can, partners who are, much more in sync, and have little less. They can reduce conflict spillover into their parenting interactions. Um, And okay, let me give you an example of a couple. This is, imaginary a couple, but, common concerns, common issues, where when they came, they have had twins, uh, still babies. Anna was feeling exhausted, angry, feeling unappreciated, didn't get enough help. Mark was feeling, very disconnected from Anna, and felt like, oh, if we don't have sex, if we only had sex, this would be, things will be different between us. And what we did in therapy is that really help Anna understand and understand what was underneath her criticism and overwhelm, that she was feeling overwhelmed, she was feeling alone, she was feeling she needed help, and she was scared of not knowing what to do, that she was doing her best and still unsure that she was a good mom. And Mark, we worked on Mark, kind of like getting close to her experience, not fixing it, but hearing Anna, that he can see and understand Anna's experience, is that, like, I get it, I know it's hard, and I'm here with you. And for Mark, we worked on him, kind of like understanding and, of course, verbalize, talking to Anna about that he's distancing, and he's, kind of like need for sex was coming from him feeling very, very scared that he's losing Anna. She was changing. She was so preoccupied with babies. He was feeling replaced and not important to her anymore. And he needed closeness. He needed to feel that he's more important. And this is, asking for sex was his way of, feeling that he needed, needed to feel more connected to Anna. And EFT really helped them, have these conversations in a very first thing, understanding, what's underneath their fights, and start to talk in a bit much more different way from a deeper place. Okay, to takeaways today for all of the new parents who are here, or professionals who are working with new parents. I want you to know that you're not broken. You're becoming. You're becoming parents. You're becoming a family. You're becoming maybe a family of 4 or 5 or so on. And it's a big transition. And like any other transition, it brings stress and change and growth. And what's the most important is that staying emotionally close, to each other, and staying during this really messy and hard times. And love isn't about avoiding pain. I mean, this is going to be painful, and it's chaotic, and it's messy, but it's about meeting each other inside of the pain. Can you find each other? Can you hold each other? In pain, in the mess, of having a baby or a toddler. And I do want to say, not all couples will need help, or couples therapy to get reconnected. But what they really need is to, like, these small moments of presence, these small moments of finding each other, and not avoiding, but really like being in sync with your partner emotionally, and saying, like, I see you, you're not alone, I'm here with you. And also, a lot of couples will benefit from emotionally focused therapy. And it's an evidence-based, and it can really help couples kind of like get back on track, get in sync, and not only be better partners and happier partners, but also be better parents. Okay, so I think we're ready for questions. I don't know if you guys want to put any. Uh, okay, let me know if you have any questions. I do have to say there was something that came from one of the participants, who actually, one of the women who couldn't participate. I think she had something. She asked, like, you know, my partner. So I do want to honor her email, her question that she sent via email. She asked, like, what happens? My partner and I are so much. We're fighting a lot. Is this normal? I'm scared about my relationship and after having the baby. And I do want to say, of course, this is common. It's very common, and um, yeah, it's very common. And be gentle with yourself. I mean, it's easier for me to say when I'm not in your shoes, but I've been there, and it's a big transition. It'll get better over time, but for right now, see if you can speak, really kind of like tap into, like, what is it that you need from your partner? Do you need more help? Do you feel overwhelmed? And can you actually speak from that place? Can you speak really from yeah, what is it that you were from? Yeah, deeper place. um Oh, okay. So here's Ashley, and she said, I have never done individual or couples therapy. Would I be allowed to bring my baby? Yes, this is actually a great question. I can't speak for other therapists, but I can speak for myself. I think a lot of other therapists are also quite flexible and welcoming, to bring babies. Yes, you can bring your baby. I think it's a little easy. It's easier with when the babies are little. We can actually focus more on the couple. But of course, it gets a little more challenging when the baby is, mobile and requires more of the, parents' attention. Um, we just, roll with punches. If we need to take a break, we'll take a break. And again, it's a little easier if it's online because you can then shift and move, but we'll pause. We'll have little short interruptions so that you can take care of the baby and then um, continue. So okay, okay. Standpoint, this seems like a challenge given the okay, let me read the question. From the physical standpoint, this seems like a challenge given the other physical demands of pumping, taking care of the baby, in essence, the time and needs of the baby. Therefore, when you get free moment, the physical connection can feel like a chore. That's true. How can you suggest we think about this or pursue this on top of the fatigue and competing wants of and needs? Um, Thank you, Davina. Yes, I think that this is very common, and I'm really delighted that you can bring this up. I think, one way to, help moms would be to really acknowledge and validate that that's really true. You're really, besides, feeling exhausted, you're constantly, there's a big demand on your body that you're feeling, I hear, anywhere like touched out or overstimulated. Can you talk to your partner? Can you talk to your partner from that place, for moms, can you say like, honey, I'm not, I am, this is where I am, I'm feeling, I had to pump every 2 hours. I had to nurse the baby. Maybe I have a toddler, the other child wants me. It's very hard for me to be, physically intimate. So that your partner really knows that you're not rejecting him or her, that you're in this place of like, I need a break, I need a space. And, that you can say, can we, for example, can we plan on Saturday to put kids or the baby earlier to bed? Or maybe you can help me. Maybe I can have you know, a little break. And then when the baby's, asleep, we can have some time to cuddle. But really speaking from the place like this is where I am. I'm not rejecting you, but I'm really feeling overtouched or overstimulated. I don't know if this helps. Um, okay. Um, I'm wondering if there is, yeah. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Let me just go to, yeah. let me all for okay. So this is, I'll look at if there are more questions. But anyway, this is my contact information. Um, Stay tuned for more webinars and more, blogs, but if you want to, if you have more questions and if you want to kind of like, touch base with me, feel free to email me. And the recording of this webinar will be available soon. So, okay. Thank you all for coming. And I think that this will conclude our webinar. Okay, bye now.